welcome back to another episode of Insight Outlook, and welcome to my most disappointing books of 2023. I'll start with a science fiction book published in 2016 called We Are Legion, We Are Bob. I was recommended this book by a friend of a friend, and they loved the book. I know a lot of people love this book. It has 3 sequels. On the website Goodreads, there is an army of nerds praising this book to no end. But I could just not get into this novel. I found the prose to be immature and the main character, Bob, to be a tad on the annoying side. This book feels like you're playing a video game and Bob is your character in the game. The concepts are cool, uploading consciousness, von Neumann machines, but it feels like fan fiction. And in my opinion, the writing is just bad. If you told me the author of this book was 15 years old, I would believe you. The basic plot is very similar to an old Larry Niven book called A World Out of Time. The protagonist wakes up in the far future after being frozen and finds their consciousness is now property of the state. There's pretty much only one character in the story and no character development. Bland imagery that makes the world hard to imagine in your head. The future political situation is one-dimensional and ridiculous. There isn't much of a plot. I could never take this story seriously. It's silly without being funny. Obviously, this is just my opinion, and I realize I'm in the minority. I'm really not trying to hate on this book, but I wanted to give my honest opinion. My next disappointing book is Exodus by Leon Uris. This is an epic historical fiction novel about the creation of the State of Israel. Exodus was a massive bestseller when it came out in 1958. It's a pro-Israel story that sees everything from the point of view of the Israelis, and they're the heroic characters in the story. But that's not why it's a bad story. It's boring in a who cares kind of way. Characters are dull, plot is not exciting or interesting, laughably bad prose. There is some intriguing history, but I would rather just read a nonfiction book about the history. I've always wanted to read Leon Uris and finally got around to it, only to be exceedingly disappointed. The film version with Paul Newman is not bad. Okay, my next disappointing book is The Partly Cloudy Patriot by Sarah Vowell, published in 2003. So back around when this book was published, The Daily Show with Jon Stewart and Late Night with Conan O'Brien were big pop culture shows. And I saw Sarah Vowell interviewed, and I always wanted to read something by her. Although I'm sure she's charming and interesting in person, I really did not like this book. The book is a collection of essays, and it starts out with the author mostly talking about herself and trying to be clever. She talks about irrelevant minutiae about the Al Gore campaign in 2000 in such a trite, partisan way. And really, a lot of the book is just discussing irrelevant minutiae about history. And she is always talking about herself, which is fine, but I thought I was reading a history book, and this book is actually more about the author than the history. One of the essays is entirely about the actor Tom Cruise, and it's completely vapid. This book does not have a coherent message. It's just a series of self-obsessed essays. After seeing Sarah Vowell in interviews, I really was expecting a highly intelligent literary history book. But that's certainly not what I got. Of course, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Next is an older book published in 1908 by G.K. Chesterton called Orthodoxy. Chesterton was a British writer and famous Christian apologist. Christian apologetics is a branch of theology that defends Christianity from secular critics. I don't know why I sometimes get in the mood to read Christian apologetics, but I do, and I'm always disappointed. I've heard a lot of praise for Chesterton, even from non-Christians, but I really don't understand why. This book was awful. And the guy is so arrogant in his arguments, even though they're hilariously bad. He believes there's plenty of evidence for miracles, and that people who don't believe in miracles are narrow-minded because they're so sure there are no miracles. He claims that morality comes from the worship of God, and that if you don't worship God, you'll be immoral, which is obvious nonsense since we have plenty of examples of Christians acting immoral and secular people acting moral. I could go on and on about all his ridiculous ideas. The book almost feels like a parody, with the author's arrogance contrasted with his terrible takes. And my most disappointing book of the year is a philosophy book by Soren Kierkegaard called Fear and Trembling. I love that name, Soren Kierkegaard. Sounds really cool. This book is primarily about the Bible story about the binding of Isaac. It's where God orders Abraham to kill his son Isaac, but right at the last minute before he's about to do it, an angel stops him and says that this was just a test, and God is pleased that Abraham was so obedient towards him. Kierkegaard seems very impressed with himself. He says that he easily understands dense philosophers like Kant and Hegel, but the binding of Isaac's story is incredibly more complex. Kierkegaard says people who have faith lead happier lives. But of course he has no proof of this claim, because why would you need proof if you have faith? Kierkegaard goes on and on about how having faith is the most difficult thing in the world. And the binding of Isaac's story proves this, because Abraham has the ultimate struggle with faith after God tells him to kill his own son. But here's the thing that smug Mr. Kierkegaard failed to realize. Abraham didn't have faith in God. Abraham had proof of God, because God directly talked to him. God is the one who ordered him to bind and kill his son Isaac. If you are getting direct orders from an all-powerful deity, then you aren't acting on faith. Kierkegaard had faith. Abraham literally talked to God and an angel. He had real proof. So all the points and profundity that Kierkegaard was proclaiming with this book are nullified. That's why I give this book my lowest rating, an F, because it was a failure in my opinion. I read many reviews and watched many videos trying to understand why this book received such high praise, and I felt like the people were just talking in circles. Perhaps Kierkegaard's other books are better. If anyone has any thoughts on Kierkegaard, please let me know in the comments. Okay, I feel bad about being so critical of these books. These are just opinions, not facts. There will always be books that some people love and others hate, and vice versa. That's all for today's show. If you have any thoughts, disagreements, whatever, let me know in the comment section. And let me know what were some of your most disappointing books of the year. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell to get updated about the next episode. Thank you.